All right, first, our top story, General Motors announcing a major restructuring move, hoping to generate cash, and they say they will invest it, spend it on innovation. This despite the U.S. auto sales near historic highs, and the White House obviously not too happy.
There's disappointment that it seems like GM would rather build its electric cars in China rather than in the United States. We are going to be looking at certain subsidies regarding electric cars and others, whether they should apply or not. I can't say anything final about that, but we're looking into it. Again, that reflects the president's own disappointment regarding these actions.
Joining me now, Bell Point Chief Strategist David Nelson, Senior Fellow at the National Taxpayer Union, Mattie Duppler, and Patriarch CEO Eric Schiffer. Let me start with you, David Nelson. The news in of itself, not a surprise. I mean, anyone who follows these companies, you just look at the earnings reports, you look at sales, you look at cars. Yeah. There was no doubt they ultimately had to do this. My problem is the ham-fisted way that they've gone about it, the fact that GM did this maybe a year too late, and they could have been doing things that could have put them on a better trajectory with respect to where people are buying cars and maybe the public relations image. You know, or vehicles, not cars, but vehicles.
Yeah, and it's kind of a shocker in a sense because they're coming off the heels of, you know, their best quarter ever, but they're trying to look forward here on this. About 70 million cars are made every year, and that's probably a conservative estimate. I think if it was any other company, I think most of us would probably say, yeah, this makes sense. But your tax dollars, my tax dollars, and everybody out there, their tax dollars help bail this company out, so it kind of sticks in our craw, and I can understand the frustration on both sides of the aisle.
You know, Mattie, here's the thing. Last quarter, the company had a record net income, record earnings, and a record average selling price. And this despite the fact that volumes were down. And those volumes been down, they were cars. So there's no doubt they had to make this announcement. But what about the notion of maybe making more SUVs, making more crossovers and things like that? Are they bracing for something else? To me, it feels like Mary Barra believes this is peak auto, you know, that the sales are going to go down anyway, and they'd rather focus on cash flow rather than product.
Charles, I disagree. I think this is an opportunity for a CEO to finally take the reins of her company, which effectively, let's be honest, has been in a taxpayer-funded conservatorship for the better part of the last decade. This has been a company, as your previous guest stated, that has been inoculated from market forces, that has not been allowed, because of the restructuring from its bailout, has not been allowed to respond to market forces.
So they couldn't do this a year ago?
I don't know the inner workings of GM, so I can't say whether they could do it a year ago or not, but I do know that people are not buying the cars that were made in these plants, and that's why it doesn't make any sense to keep them open. Listen, Americans are buying American SUVs. Auto companies need to recognize that and need to be able to pivot and accommodate what the consumers want, not what is being built in their plants if there isn't any demand for it. That is the recipe for disaster, and it's what got GM in its mess in 2008 to begin with.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. Let me reiterate what I'm saying, that they could have done this a couple of years earlier. General Motors stock from January of 2013 to today is up 37%. Fiat Chrysler stock is up 382%. Okay, the bottom line is they did not address this, and now to come out with it at this time, Eric, I think the political ramifications are going to hurt them. One of the reasons the stock has been flat is right after the bailout, people were upset, people were offended, and a lot of Americans did not buy this product.
Well, and they should be offended, Charles. I mean, this is pretty disgusting, frankly. I mean, this is a company that had Americans not stepped up in 2008, it would be dead. We saved this company, and frankly, they've got a very short memory. And this could have been done a year ago. They could have worked with the administration. They could have thought through workers' best interests. But instead, what they're doing is, I think, very unfair. It's very disloyal to Americans who saved this company. When you've got a CEO who's making $22 million a year, when they could have planned this a long time ago, and you're providing a platform. This is my biggest concern. You're providing a platform for further anti-capitalism with socialists like Cortez from New York who will use this as further evidence that you can't trust capitalism, you can't trust business. Right. And well, to me, that's just not right.
Yeah, there was already one article I saw out of the Washington Post that said as much, but you're going to see a whole lot more of these. And again, you know, there's some business issues. I don't doubt that, but the way it's been articulated, for instance, in this last quarter, they lost market share everywhere. In cars, they went to 10.6% from 11%. In trucks, they went to 24% from 27%. In crossovers, they went to 13% from 15%. See, the company has some serious issues, and instead of saying, hey, you know what, we've kind of blown it the last few years, and we've got caught flat-footed, they're talking about things like tariffs and stuff like that, and I think it's not going to hurt them with the people who have been loyal to the brand.
I think everything that you're saying and everything that's been said on this show so far, it's true, but there's a larger dynamic going on out there. And I think every other company, auto company, is going to have to deal with this as well. We're moving to a new society. We're going to have autonomous cars. We're in an Uber-like society right now. We're just not going to need 70 million cars a year. The average car sits dormant for about 22 hours of every day. I think this is the company starting to recognize that. I think you're going to see others follow suit. Ford might be the first to go.
Mattie, the CAFE standards, also Larry Kudlow talked about the subsidies for electric vehicles. To what degree should government be involved with this industry right now?
Charles, I think what we need to ask from government is to have an ecosystem in which businesses can innovate and they can provide for the industry of the future. That means for workers and for consumers. That point that was made by your last guest is so important. Auto companies are no longer car companies. They are tech companies, and they need to be investing in a way that makes them competitive in the future. That is why I don't share this nonsense about CEOs being paid too much or not making the right move at the right time. We are right now in an ecosystem and in an environment where workers can lose their job and find a new one the next day. We got 3.7% unemployment. This is exactly the kind of business restructuring you want to happen in an economy that is working the way it's supposed to right now. There's no better opportunity to do that.
Tell that to those workers that just got laid off. Tell that to those workers that are on the street right now hurting. That's just not right.
They're going to go work at another GM
Come
factory.
on, get serious.
They're going to work at another GM factory making different cars that consumers actually want.
That would be ideal.
The rest are not going to be working.
Let's hope that is the case, in fact, because there's tremendous demand, again, for SUVs, for crossovers, for pickup trucks. In fact, that's why they just had one of the most profitable quarters in the history of the company. Great,
exactly
passionate stuff. Thank you all very much. David, Mattie, and Eric. Later in the show, a new poll where Americans say they find meaning in life. I cannot believe